The Ultimate Warrior was one of the most exciting wrestlers ever. His energy was unmatched. His face paint was iconic. But behind all that power and all those muscles was a man who seemed to hate everyone. "I hated him" became a phrase connected to Warrior more than almost any other wrestler in history. Why did the Ultimate Warrior hate so many people? The answer reveals a career built on conflict, ego, and revenge that spanned decades. The story of Warrior's hate reached its peak in 2005. That year, WWE released a documentary called The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. The film was brutal. It featured interview after interview from wrestlers and managers who tore Warrior apart. They called him unprofessional. They said his promos made no sense. They mocked his in-ring skills. They laughed at his behavior backstage. The documentary was not a celebration. It was a destruction, and Warrior was furious beyond measure. Jim Hellwig, the man who legally changed his name to Warrior, fired back hard. He wrote angry responses online. He called the documentary a combination of small truths and fat lies. He accused Vince and Linda McMahon of creating disgraceful revisionist history. But Warrior did not stop there. He went after everyone who appeared in that film. He named names. He attacked reputations. And he made it clear that he hated the people who tried to destroy his legacy. The DVD became the catalyst. It turned professional grudges into a public war. This was no longer about wrestling. This was about revenge. One of the first people Warrior went after was number 10 on his list. Ted DiBiase, known as the $1 Million Man, appeared on the Self-Destruction DVD. DiBiase was a respected veteran. He had worked with Warrior for years. But DiBiase did not hold back his criticism. He said on camera that making Warrior the World Wrestling Federation champion was not a good idea. DiBiase believed Warrior lacked the skills to carry the top title. He was not alone in that opinion. Many veterans felt the same way. But DiBiase saying it publicly on a WWE DVD made him a target in Warrior's eyes. Warrior saw DiBiase as part of a corporate attack. He lumped DiBiase in with all the other voices in the documentary who tried to tear him down. DiBiase represented the old guard of wrestling. He was someone who valued technical skill and professionalism above all else. Warrior did not care about those things. He cared about intensity and spectacle. The clash between their philosophies turned DiBiase into an enemy. Warrior viewed him as someone complicit in WWE's attempt to erase his contributions. DiBiase's professional criticism became personal hate in Warrior's eyes. The fact that DiBiase had such a long relationship with Hellwig made the betrayal feel even worse to Warrior. Number 9 on the list was Chris Benoit. Benoit was one of the most respected technical wrestlers of his generation. He was known for his work ethic and his dedication to the craft. But Benoit also appeared in the Self-Destruction DVD. According to rumors, Benoit participated in a segment called Ultimate Impressions. In that segment, wrestlers allegedly mocked Warrior by imitating his wild promos and over-the-top behavior. Benoit was said to have foamed at the mouth and yelled at the top of his voice while pretending to be Warrior. The imitation was meant to be funny, but Warrior did not laugh. This mockery enraged Warrior. He felt that Benoit, a man respected by peers and fans, was being used by WWE to make him look foolish. Warrior did not see it as comedy. He saw it as disrespect. He grouped Benoit with the others who participated in the corporate smear campaign. The fact that Benoit was so highly regarded in the wrestling business made the insult worse. Warrior believed the company was using credible voices to discredit him. Benoit became another name on Warrior's growing list of enemies. The hatred was rooted in betrayal and humiliation. Warrior felt that wrestlers like Benoit should have stood up for him instead of mocking him for corporate entertainment. Number 8 was Batista. Batista was a major star in WWE during the mid-2000s. He was muscular and intense. He had a powerful presence. And according to Warrior, Batista was also a thief. Warrior accused Batista of stealing his signature moves and mannerisms. In his angry response to the Self-Destruction DVD, Warrior claimed that Batista tied bootlaces around his arms and talked to his hands in the DVD segment. Warrior mocked Batista for shaking the ropes, saying it was something only the Ultimate Warrior does. The accusation was clear. Batista was an imitator. Warrior saw Batista as a cheap imitation. He believed Batista copied his look and his energy to get over with fans. The accusation was not just about stolen moves. It was about stolen identity. Warrior felt that modern WWE was erasing his legacy by letting new stars pretend to be him without giving him credit. Batista became a symbol of everything Warrior hated about the company in the 2000s. He represented a generation that built their success on the back of Warrior's innovations while simultaneously mocking him in corporate hit pieces. The rope shaking was particularly offensive to Warrior. He saw it as his signature, and watching someone else do it while participating in a DVD that tore him down felt like the ultimate betrayal. Number 7 was Triple H. Triple H was Vince McMahon's son-in-law. He was also one of the biggest stars in WWE history. But to Warrior, Triple H was just another imitator. Warrior accused Triple H of copying his persona. He claimed that Triple H would mess up his hair and shake the ropes to pretend he was the ultimate warrior. Warrior saw this as deliberate mockery. He believed Triple H lacked originality and only succeeded because of his connection to the McMahon family. The accusations were harsh and direct. The hatred for Triple H went beyond stolen gimmicks. Triple H appeared in the Self-Destruction DVD. He contributed to the narrative that Warrior was difficult and unprofessional. Warrior viewed Triple H as a corporate puppet. He saw him as someone who would say anything to protect his position in the company. The combination of imitation and participation in the DVD made Triple H a major target. Warrior believed Triple H was everything wrong with modern wrestling. He was political, he was calculated, and he used his family connection to stay on top while tearing down legends like Warrior. The fact that Triple H married into the McMahon family made him untouchable in Warrior's view. He could criticize legends without consequences, and that infuriated Warrior. Number 6 was Andre the Giant. Andre was one of the most beloved figures in wrestling history, but working with Andre was not easy, especially in his later years. By the late 1980s, Andre's body was breaking down. His mobility was limited. He needed opponents who could work carefully and slowly. Warrior was not that opponent. Warrior's style was explosive and chaotic. He moved fast, he hit hard, and he did not adjust for anyone. The clash was inevitable. In late 1989, Warrior and Andre were paired together. The younger Warrior regularly squashed the aging Giant in matches designed to showcase Warrior's star power. But the matches were difficult. Andre could barely move. Warrior refused to slow down. The mismatch created tension. Andre was a legend who deserved respect. Warrior treated him like any other opponent. The clash was not as violent as some of Warrior's other feuds, but it added to his reputation for being difficult. Andre's physical limitations required patience. Warrior had none. The pairing showed that Warrior cared more about his own performance than the safety or dignity of his opponents. Some matches lasted barely over a minute. Warrior would hit a clothesline and pin Andre while his entrance music was still playing. It was disrespectful to a legend. Number 5 was Ric Flair. Flair was known as one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. He was a 16-time world champion. He could work with anyone. But even Flair could not escape Warrior's recklessness. In 1992, Warrior and Flair had a feud. They wrestled on house shows around the country. During one of those matches, Warrior hit Flair with a wild punch. The punch caused a major inner ear injury. The injury was serious enough that WWE had to change their plans. Flair was scheduled to hold the WWF Championship for a longer run. But because of the injury, WWE took the title off Flair and put it on Bret Hart instead. The injury derailed everything. Flair was furious. He appeared on the Self-Destruction DVD years later. His bitterness was obvious. He was as personally bitter about Warrior as anyone else interviewed for the film. Flair did not just criticize Warrior's lack of technical skill, he criticized his safety. Warrior's punch ended a championship reign. It derailed plans. It caused real physical damage. Flair saw Warrior as dangerous and inferior. The injury turned professional criticism into personal hatred. Flair never forgave Warrior for cutting his title run short, and Warrior never apologized. The lack of accountability made Flair's resentment even stronger. Flair had worked with hundreds of wrestlers, but Warrior was one of the few who actually injured him through carelessness. Number 4 was Bobby Heenan. Heenan was one of the greatest managers in wrestling history. He was witty and sharp. He could cut promos better than almost anyone. But Heenan also had the most sheer animosity toward Warrior in the Self-Destruction DVD. Heenan spoke about Warrior as if he was literally a piece of garbage. He did not hide his contempt. He tore into Warrior with more venom than any other person interviewed. Heenan's hatred was clear and unfiltered. Every word dripped with disgust. But Warrior's response was even worse. In his post-career public forums, Warrior lashed out at Heenan in the most disgusting way possible. Heenan had been diagnosed with cancer. He was fighting for his life, and Warrior said publicly that Bobby Heenan deserved cancer. The statement was beyond hateful. It was cruel. It was evil. Warrior did not just attack Heenan's career. He attacked his humanity. He wished death on a man who was already suffering. The comment revealed the depth of Warrior's rage. It showed that his hatred was not just professional, it was personal and ideological. Heenan became the target of the most venomous attack Warrior ever launched. The hatred between them was toxic and unforgivable. Heenan had criticized Warrior on a DVD. Warrior responded by celebrating his cancer. That is not professional rivalry, that is pure hatred. Number 3 was Rick Rude. Rick Rude was known as Ravishing Rick Rude. He was a talented wrestler who valued professionalism. He expected his opponents to take care of him in the ring. He would do the same for them. But Warrior did not follow that code. Warrior was stiff. He hit hard. He did not care if he hurt people. During their matches, Warrior nailed Rude a few times with real punches. Rude was not going to let that slide. He waited until they got back to the dressing room. Then he set Warrior straight. The confrontation was physical and intense. The backstage fight happened in Toronto. Multiple people confirmed it. Rude confronted Warrior physically. Some accounts say Rude almost ended Warrior's career in that real fight. Warrior had been talking trash about Rude. Rude made sure Warrior understood that disrespect would not be tolerated. The fight was not just about a few stiff shots, it was about principle. Rude was an honorable guy. He believed in the code of professional wrestling. Warrior did not respect that code. The physical confrontation turned their on-screen rivalry into real-life disdain. Rude hated Warrior for his recklessness. Warrior hated Rude for standing up to him. The fight left lasting tension between the two men. Rude never forgot what happened, and neither did anyone else who heard about it backstage. Number 2 was Vince McMahon. Vince was the owner of the WWF. He was the man who controlled Warrior's career. But their relationship was always strained. The tension was rooted in money and control. Warrior believed he was worth more than Vince was willing to pay. In 1991, Warrior held Vince hostage before SummerSlam. He demanded more money or he would not perform. Vince had no choice but to pay, but the move destroyed Warrior's career. Vince never forgot, and Vince always got his revenge. The business relationship was poisoned forever. Years later, WWE released the Self-Destruction DVD. Warrior saw it as Vince's final attempt to erase his legacy. The documentary was full of negative opinions and lies. Warrior accused Vince and Linda McMahon of creating disgraceful revisionist history. He believed the McMahons used their corporate power to minimize his contributions to wrestling. The hatred between Warrior and Vince was not just about money, it was about respect. Warrior felt disrespected by the company he helped build. Vince felt disrespected by a wrestler who tried to hold him hostage. The conflict between them defined Warrior's entire relationship with WWE. Vince was the ultimate financial antagonist. He controlled Warrior's past and tried to control his legacy. The DVD was proof of that control. Warrior could not fight back through the legal system, so he fought back through public attacks. Number 1 was Hulk Hogan. Hogan was the biggest star in wrestling history. He was the benchmark. Warrior was measured against Hogan in every way, and their relationship was defined by intense rivalry and jealousy. On screen, they were portrayed as superhero rivals. They had an iconic match at WrestleMania 6 where Warrior defeated Hogan for the WWF Championship. But behind the scenes, the relationship was toxic. Professional jealousy destroyed their working relationship. Both men wanted to be the top star. Both men wanted control. Neither was willing to share the spotlight. The competition was brutal. The problems continued into WCW. In 1998, Warrior returned to face Hogan again. But the match was a disaster. Hogan openly talked about how difficult it was to work with Warrior. He recalled a match at the Sky Dome where Warrior blew up real quick. Only 8 minutes into the match, Warrior was exhausted. He told Hogan, "Let's go home." Hogan had to carry the match. The Halloween Havoc match in WCW was widely considered terrible. Both men were older, both were more limited. But Warrior's lack of conditioning was obvious. Hogan's arrogance, combined with Warrior's poor shape, created a perfect storm of failure. The match was so bad that fans and critics tore it apart. The hatred between Hogan and Warrior was rooted in ego. Hogan believed he was the greatest. Warrior believed he deserved to be the greatest. Neither could accept being second. Their rivalry was not just about who won matches, it was about who controlled the industry. Hogan had the political skills and the relationships. Warrior had the intensity and the look, but intensity was not enough. Hogan outlasted Warrior in WWE, Hogan outlasted Warrior in WCW, and Hogan's legacy remained intact while Warrior's was attacked by the Self-Destruction DVD. The business rivalry turned into genuine disdain. Hogan was the apex rival. He was the man Warrior could never truly defeat, and that fact haunted Warrior for the rest of his life. But there was one major exception to Warrior's hatred. Randy Savage was a top rival who Warrior actually respected. Savage and Warrior had one of the most significant rivalries in wrestling history. They had a career-ending match at WrestleMania 7. They even formed a tag team called the Ultimate Maniacs before Warrior was fired in 1992. But Warrior never hated Savage. In fact, after Savage died, Warrior spoke highly of him. He praised Savage's professionalism and character. Warrior said that shaking Savage's hand made you feel the life force in him. He said Savage was grounded as a man. Warrior believed Savage's legacy was about being the absolute best at who you truly were. The respect was genuine and heartfelt. The respect Warrior showed Savage was rare. It revealed that Warrior's hatred was selective. He hated people he saw as political obstacles. He hated people he saw as corporate sycophants. He hated people he thought were unprofessional. But Savage was different. Savage valued passion over politics. He was intense and legitimate. Warrior saw Savage as a peer, not a competitor. The contrast between how Warrior talked about Savage and how he talked about Hogan, Flair, and DiBiase was stark. Savage earned Warrior's respect. The others earned his contempt. Savage understood Warrior, and Warrior understood Savage. That mutual respect was almost impossible to find elsewhere in Warrior's career. The deeper truth about Warrior's hatred is that much of it was self-inflicted. Warrior complained about disgraceful revisionist history, but his own behavior validated the criticism. He was stiff in the ring. He injured people. He refused to adjust his style for opponents who needed protection. He held Vince McMahon hostage for money. He ran over his allotted promo time in WCW by over 20 minutes, forcing Eric Bischoff to rewrite Monday Nitro on the spot. He was difficult to work with. He was unpredictable, and he was often unsafe. The criticism was not invented. It was earned through years of reckless behavior. Outside the ring, Warrior's behavior was even worse. He made anti-LGBTQ comments at college campuses. He mocked Heath Ledger's death. He wrote hateful blog posts in the 2000s. There were accounts that he refused to meet a Make-A-Wish child. He snapped at fans who asked for autographs. The man behind the character had zero compassion. His post-wrestling life was defined by extreme ideological statements and cruelty. WWE's Self-Destruction DVD may have been harsh, but many of the criticisms were accurate. Warrior created the hate he received. He was his own worst enemy. His actions spoke louder than any documentary ever could. Eric Bischoff experienced this firsthand. Bischoff was the head of WCW when Warrior returned in 1998. Bischoff gave Warrior a chance to revive his career, but Warrior immediately caused chaos. His debut promo on Monday Nitro was supposed to launch the feud with Hogan. The promo had a set time limit, but Warrior ignored it. He kept talking and talking and talking. The promo lasted over 27 minutes. That was more than 20 minutes over time. Bischoff had to execute a massive rewrite of the entire show on the spot. Production was thrown into chaos. Wrestlers had to adjust their matches. The schedule was destroyed, all because Warrior refused to follow the plan. The lack of professionalism was staggering. Bischoff appeared on the Self-Destruction DVD years later. His negative commentary likely stemmed from the disaster of Warrior's WCW run. The feud with Hogan was terrible. The matches were bad. Warrior's lack of professionalism created stress for everyone involved. Bischoff became another name on Warrior's list of corporate enemies. But the hatred was deserved. Warrior showed no regard for the people trying to help him. He cared only about himself. Bischoff was trying to run a live television show. Warrior destroyed that show because he wanted to talk longer. That kind of selfishness defines Warrior's entire career. The architecture of Warrior's animosity reveals a man who could not reconcile his character with reality. The Ultimate Warrior was an icon. The face paint was unforgettable. The energy was explosive. The entrance was legendary. But Jim Hellwig, the man behind the paint, was bitter and angry. He fought with everyone. He injured opponents. He burned bridges with promoters. He demanded more money while delivering less effort. And when WCW tried to document his career honestly, he responded with rage. The disconnect between the character and the man was massive. The Self-Destruction DVD was the turning point. It gave Warrior a new list of enemies. Bobby Heenan, Ted DiBiase, Triple H, Batista, and Chris Benoit all appeared in the film or participated in mocking segments. Warrior saw them as part of a corporate conspiracy. He attacked them publicly. He accused them of being imitators and liars. He wished cancer on Heenan. He mocked Triple H and Batista for stealing his act. He lumped Benoit in with the corporate puppets. The vendetta consumed him. It became his life's mission to fight back against everyone who criticized him. But the hatred did not start with the DVD. It started in the ring. Rick Rude fought Warrior backstage after being stiff too many times. Ric Flair lost a championship reign because Warrior injured his ear. Andre the Giant struggled to work with Warrior because Warrior refused to slow down. Hulk Hogan hated working with Warrior because Warrior could not keep up in the ring. Vince McMahon hated Warrior because Warrior held him hostage for money. Eric Bischoff hated Warrior because Warrior destroyed a live television show with his selfishness. Every conflict had a common thread. Warrior created the problem. He was the source of his own destruction. The list of 10 people Warrior hated is really a list of 10 people who had legitimate reasons to hate him first. Ted DiBiase told the truth about Warrior's skills. Chris Benoit participated in a comedy segment. Batista and Triple H became stars using intensity and energy, which Warrior saw as theft. Bobby Heenan spoke honestly about Warrior's behavior. Rick Rude defended himself from stiff shots. Ric Flair suffered a real injury. Andre the Giant could not work safely with Warrior's reckless style. Hulk Hogan had to carry Warrior through bad matches. Vince McMahon was held hostage. Eric Bischoff watched his show fall apart. Each person had a reason to dislike Warrior, and Warrior hated them for it. The cycle of hatred was endless. The hypocrisy is obvious. Warrior accused WWE of disgraceful revisionist history, but Warrior spent years revising his own history. He blamed others for his failures. He claimed he was a victim of politics. He said the company tried to erase him, but the truth is simpler. Warrior was difficult, he was unsafe, he was unprofessional, and he refused to take responsibility. The Self-Destruction DVD was not a hatchet job. It was a documentary. The people interviewed told their stories, and those stories painted an accurate picture of a man who created conflict wherever he went. The evidence was overwhelming. Warrior's reputation for being difficult followed him everywhere. From WWF to WCW and back again, the same problems arose. He demanded too much money. He did not prepare properly. He ignored the needs of his opponents. He prioritized his image over the quality of the matches. He burned bridges with management. And when people criticized him, he attacked them viciously. The pattern never changed. Warrior was a one-man wrecking crew. He destroyed relationships as quickly as he built his legend. No promotion could handle him for long. The 10 people on Warrior's list represent the full spectrum of his animosity. Ted DiBiase and Chris Benoit were peers who criticized him. Batista and Triple H were successors he saw as thieves. Bobby Heenan was a commentator who mocked him. Rick Rude and Ric Flair were veterans he injured. Andre the Giant was a legend he disrespected. Hulk Hogan was a rival he could never surpass. Vince McMahon was a boss he tried to manipulate. Eric Bischoff was a promoter he sabotaged. Each relationship ended in hatred. Each conflict added to the narrative. Warrior was not just a wrestler, he was a magnet for animosity. He attracted conflict like a lightning rod attracts lightning. The legacy of the Ultimate Warrior is complicated. On one hand, he was one of the most exciting performers in wrestling history. His entrance was electric. His matches were short and intense. His look was iconic. Fans loved him. He won the WWF Championship at WrestleMania 6 in one of the greatest matches ever. He headlined pay-per-views. He sold merchandise. He was a star. But on the other hand, he was one of the most hated men in the business. His peers did not respect him. His bosses did not trust him. His opponents feared working with him, not because of his talent, but because of his recklessness. The two sides of his legacy cannot be separated. The Self-Destruction DVD tried to tell the full story. It included the good and the bad, but Warrior only saw the bad. He saw betrayal, he saw lies, he saw a conspiracy, and he responded with a vendetta that lasted until his death. The hatred consumed him. It defined his post-wrestling life. Instead of accepting criticism and moving forward, Warrior dug in. He attacked everyone. He made enemies out of people who could have been allies. He turned professional disagreements into personal wars. The vendetta became his identity. The 10 names on the list tell the story of a man who could not let go. Ted DiBiase, Chris Benoit, Batista, Triple H, Bobby Heenan, Rick Rude, Ric Flair, Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, Vince McMahon, and Eric Bischoff. 11 people if you count Bischoff outside the core 10. Each one had a reason to be on the list. Each one represented a different type of conflict. Business rivals, injured opponents, corporate critics, modern stars, backstage fighters, promoters. The list was comprehensive, and it was entirely self-inflicted. Warrior built his own list of enemies through his actions. Warrior died in 2014, just days after being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. He gave a speech where he talked about his legacy. He seemed at peace, but the years of hatred and conflict could not be erased. The 10 people he hated were still there. The injuries he caused were still remembered. The fights he started were still talked about. The self-destruction DVD was still available, and the reputation he built was still intact. Warrior was unforgettable, but not always for the right reasons. His legacy was forever tainted by the conflicts he created. The Ultimate Warrior was a force of nature. His intensity was unmatched. His look was iconic. He brought energy and excitement to every arena he entered. But that same intensity made him impossible to work with. His refusal to compromise created enemies. His recklessness injured opponents. His ego destroyed relationships. And his post-career vendetta turned professional criticism into personal hatred. The 10 wrestlers he hated were really 10 people who experienced the worst of Jim Hellwig. They saw behind the face paint. They worked with the man, not the character, and they paid the price. The Ultimate Warrior's legacy is a mix of brilliance and bitterness. He was a star who burned too bright and left a trail of conflict in his wake. If you want to learn more about the Ultimate Warrior and